Chapter 4. Shattered glass in flower beds. Look, Dr. Young, I know this is short notice, but I'd feel much safer if I could stay here as soon as possible. The magnitude of these nightmares, especially when they happen in the day, are increasingly overwhelming to me. Is there anything we can do to get me in here as quick as possible? Dr. Young replied,
You really feel that unsafe, William?
William said nothing and just nodded. Then Dr. Young thought for a minute.
Well, I suppose we could figure something out. But we'll still need all your information to get you in. Driver's license, birth certificate, social, all that sort of stuff.
William knew he might say that. That's why in the morning when he left his house, he grabbed everything he needed, including extra clothes, and threw it all in the back seat of his car. Including one small picture of his girl, smiling with the sun on her face at a lake where he took a picture. William then spoke. Actually, I have all that in my car. Dr. Young, almost surprised, thought and then stated,
Well, then bring that all in. I'll have Nancy set you up, William.
William smiled and shook Dr. Young's hand while thanking him gratefully. He then ran outside to his car. He got his papers and then sat in the front seat to think harder for a second. Somehow, while in the front seat, William found himself thinking about humanity and his place here on Earth. A sudden attack of failure fell upon him. This isn't what he wanted. Not to be going crazy like he was. He continued his stream of conscious. William felt empty now. He sat in the car for a good 5 minutes staring at the sky. It looked like a storm was retracing construction in the same spot that it had in his dreams. William felt frustrated. He was thinking about all the bad things in life, including his current situation, which left him rather dark. William could care less about the insignificant and asinine things his peers did every day. He stopped caring about them when he got out in the world and had to make a living for himself. He thought to himself in the car. He thought more about his family. They were so beautiful to him. She was a great girl too. The grey sky steadily grew more grim as William festered from his thoughts. Subconsciously, William was thinking it would rain. He'd like that. Once again, William's thoughts metastasized into wondering why murder and rape happen all the time. He'd often question if justice was really at its finest at this point in humanity's small blink into the light. After his tragedy, William hated crime with a passion deeper than any love that had ever existed on this planet. He didn't understand how it came about for him to be so fixed on it. Sometimes you could say that William hated himself because he felt contaminated by his society at certain points in his life. After the incident, he just plain didn't feel like he fit in or held any type of connection with his peers, or anyone else for that matter. No, he wasn't a rapist or a murderer, but he kicked himself for his own little imperfections. He found Earth as a place disgracefully tied to perversions he'd much rather leave behind, or set aside. Lately, William had been watching people all the time for the bad stuff they did. After all of this thinking, William turned to ask someone who he always argued with. God. Whenever he had questions, he talked out loud with God. It's funny how when we get angry, it's easier to look up and rant rather than down. Maybe it was the fact that a higher being should be held responsible for even the bad that happened. Just as it rolls downhill in a corporate world, it rolls downhill in a religious world as well. So much keep your head up and keep a good attitude came from above, yet it seemed that failures would come from above equally as often. Oh, how the age of autonomy was letting the fault rest on the unaware rather than those who are truly responsible. To William, autonomy was just responsibility without power. Such notions of higher intelligence came from above your ranks in society, yet so little accountability on the superior's side. William answered himself in most cases. He knew that anything in this world was truly up to you and only you. William always wanted a sign. A sign not for proof of God, otherwise he wouldn't be talking to him in the first place. He just wanted proof of purpose. William wondered what the hell Earth was for. What all of the motion, light and atomic bombardment was really about. Most of all, he wondered what he was alive for. William believed in a god. Not the shimmering, bright, religious type god, but somewhere along those lines. He simply looked at the word God and the being that is named with it as the outcome to all things. The reason for everything, whether it be of science or of faith, good or bad. William wanted to know why he felt like the only one who was down here seeing all our flaws. He wanted to know why he felt like nothing but a camera, an observer. He was done with observing. He was disgusted with them and himself. I've had enough of it now. Enough! William shouted furiously in his car. The sky was completely grey now. William grounded his teeth together and grunted in frustration. He grabbed onto his steering wheel as if to strangle someone and shook it hard. William was now biting his bottom lip. He punched the windshield in front of him over and over and again, with fury that he was ashamed of and wished he could release it on only the wicked. But that never happens, does it? We release it on unnecessary elements and for some more ignorant and unaware. On ones we love. His knuckles started to bleed. And along with his last effort to hit the windshield, a raindrop, followed by a heavy roar of thunder, raced excitingly towards his car, and right where his fist landed. Finally the windshield cracked, in unison with the question that everyone asked when all options were gone and the feeling of submission and defeat hit you. Why? A loud burst of thunder commenced as William's fist met the broken glass, which met with a drop of rain from the outside. William stopped now and put his bloody hand to his head. He broke down and started to cry uncontrollably. After William was done with anger, he took a deep breath. He couldn't help but feel ashamed to be affected so much by the cowardly actions of a worthless being. Suddenly there was a tap on his passenger window. William turned. A man stood at the window and leaned down to show himself. William was taken by great surprise as he noticed that it was the same man with a scar on his face that he drove by and saw every day. William then raised his brows as if to ask the man, "Can I help you?" The man just motioned towards the door handle with his head. William then shouted loud enough for the man to hear, "It's unlocked!" The man just stood and said nothing. Confused, William also felt like he should let this guy talk to him. Anything would help his mood right now, so he leaned over and popped the door open. The man spoke.
"Thank you, sir. It's chilly out there. Mind if I sit in and have a talk? I saw you look pretty upset a moment ago."
William, with slight embarrassment, said, "Yeah, go ahead, have a seat." The man placed a smile on his gritty mid to older aged face and sat down in the car and shut the door. He then said,
"So, what's on your mind, kid?"
William said, "I wish I knew." The man reached his hand out and said,
"I'm Logan, by the way. And you are?"
William returned the handshake while saying, "William Iris. Nice to meet you, Logan." Logan then riveted William's attention with,
"Yeah, we all want to know our place here on Earth, kiddo. It's natural."
William lowered his brow and gave a skeptical look at Logan in disbelief that he could actually know what William had said in the car a moment earlier. William asked, "How did you..." Logan said,
"What? Know what you said? By reading your lips and the expression on your face. I've seen that look 1,000 times before. That's the look of a young man who tries to learn more about life, but also lets life get the best of him. The more you know, the less you learn, William."
William made a confused face and said, "How so?" Logan shot back while removing the gloves from his hands.
"Hey, can you start the car for a little and turn on the heat for a moment? I'd appreciate it."
William did this and continued to ask, "So, I see you out here every morning. You know someone at Vista?" Logan looked up at the structure in front of them, and then turned to William saying,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know someone in there. Hey, looks like the sky is clearing up a little bit.
Logan gestured towards the clearing sky. Light blue seeped in through the once grey clouds that were now turning slightly white. Logan went on,
You ever think about what happens after you die, kid?
William thought and said, "Yeah, a little." William was being extremely modest with that answer. Logan cracked a smile and continued,
Funny how people of religion get their view on their own heaven and close out all other options of what it could be, huh?
William was intrigued by the man's opinion and said, "Well, we can't know now, can we? Not till we get past those clouds." Logan laughed a little and said,
Kids. Look, William, I only have one thing to say to you before you take this journey you're about to endure.
William sat motionless at the man's prediction as he went on.
Most people think they're stuck in a track house life. Others are stuck behind bars in a prison cell. Really think in your head, William. Is it possible to be stuck anywhere with this?
Logan tapped the right temple on his head and kept on talking.
We're never stuck anywhere, William. We aren't stuck with anything at all. Not when you hold a mind within your body.
There was a pause of thought, then he continued.
Heaven's not some place in the sky past them clouds.
Logan pointed to the more blue sky that now held only a few white clouds. He then slowly moved his finger over to William's chest and pushed firmly.
It's right there.
William didn't know what to say to the man, but felt satisfied. Logan then rubbed the scar on his left eye and said,
That's all I wanted to tell you, kid. I gotta get going. Storm's coming in. A lot of rain. Lots of overcast.
William said, "Well, it was nice talking." Logan got out without even listening, and without shutting the car door, went and sat back down on the bench. William was greatly confused by this man, but interested. He shook his head after the little talk, grabbed the rest of his belongings out of the trunk and headed back into Vista. There were 2 Japanese maple trees at the front entrance on each side of the big white doors. The trees were bright red at this time of year and looked beautiful in contrast with the white building, and mostly blue-grey sky. William noticed as he opened the door that it didn't make the loud scraping noise that it did when he first ventured into this place. He strolled down the hallway to meet the same mouse-like lady who was there the first time he came. "Excuse me, ma'am?" William politely asked. He wasn't feeling like his normal smart-ass self right now because of that incident in the car earlier.
Oh, hey. You again, huh?
Nancy replied. She then said to William,
Okay, hun, I'm gonna need you to sign right here and hand me all your info. Oh, and keep your belongings with you. They'll be checked for any weapons when you enter and change. The orderlies will be out with some clothes in just a minute. You can have a seat if you'd like.
He looked down at the white paper on the clipboard that Nancy put out in front of him. He glanced at it and noticed all of the names and dates that they had checked into 2011. William also noticed that none were checked out yet. This made his stomach sink. William also noticed 2 interesting names above his own. David Glass, in 12/24/04, out N/A. And lastly, John, in 9/27/10. William signed in with one of the cheap pens that were attached to the desk. It had one of those little ball chains that always break. For every letter he printed on that page, it felt like weights were being hung from his lungs. William Iris, in 9/27/11. William finished up and took a seat. Leaning back on his chair, William peeked through the 2 thick glass doors that stood firmly behind Nancy, followed by a shiny metal cage. He saw 2 young men walking toward the glass doors. They looked William's age. They were giggling like schoolgirls as they walked down the hall. One of them took their badge and carded it through the doors. William noticed that both of their badges had a big red stripe on the bottom. In that big red stripe, it had the word temp in bold letters. They both looked like jocks straight out of high school. They were both about 6 feet tall. One was tanned and the other white. The tanned one had bleached hair, and the lighter toned one had short brown hair. Nancy looked at them both for a second as they stared blankly into her eyes. She raised her eyebrows and pointed them toward William. As they turned, laughing, they saw William. He was just sitting on the chair and staring at them. As soon as they saw him, the smiles and laughs left them. William noticed this and knew that it was because he was their age and didn't look like your average mental patient. Then again, William didn't know what much of the patients looked like at all. But he just knew this was the reason they stopped their cheery mood.
William, the one on the left is Bryce, and the other is Jared. They have your new clothes, and we'll show you to your room and all that stuff, okay, hun? Oh, and don't forget, you have your evaluation with Dr. Young at 11 p.m. That's in 3 hours.
Nancy said with a smile. William nodded. Jared handed William an all-white outfit with shoes and said to William,
"Just follow us, sir. We'll show you your room."
Bryce and Jared just looked at William in a brief moment of awkwardness, and then started walking towards William's new home. Bryce and Jared walked beside William down the hall and through double doors to another hall. They proceeded until they came to William's room. There was a long window on the door, and above it was a label that read, R1011. This was William's number. After they opened the doors, they said,
Welcome
home, man.
and quickly left.
Come on, bro, I'm starving. Let's get out of this nut house and go to lunch.
Bryce whined as they walked away. William shook his head, blinked, and then walked into his little white room. He kind of liked it. There was a bed up against the wall just below the window that was placed in the center. A little light brown nightstand with nothing but a small lamp and a digital clock with red numbers sat on the left side of the bed. He liked that there was a big window by his bed that looked out into the city street. Across the street was the park where William and she walked so many times. Aside from what happened that night, the park was quite beautiful and peaceful. William noticed that the park had mature foliage and oak trees in the middle of the grassy areas. Turning maple leaves from the fall season were almost evenly spotted along the walk paths throughout the park. He saw an old man sitting on a bench and some kids playing what looked to William like Hot Lava Monster. He smiled and felt sad at the same time. William remembered playing a game like that with his cousins and brother when he was younger. He really missed being an innocent-minded kid. William found a moment of solitude to put on his institution outfit. He unfolded the white canvas pants and let them hang in the sunshine on the edge of the bed. The white long-sleeve top had the number 1011 embroidered in bold black letters on the front. The numbers were positioned in horizontal form, however stacked vertically down the left-hand side of his chest. They started nearly 2 inches from the V-shaped collar and proceeded until about 6 inches from the waistline. Surely these numbers were obviously visible from afar. A uniform designed with logic and purpose. The V-shaped neckline was folded and thicker for rigidity, and was also white canvas with a fine black stitching along both the top and bottom border of the V. Just below and left of center from the thick collar, the letters VMI were printed with a curious bracket symbol preceding them. William admired the shoulders of the jacket the most. Almost like pads, the shoulders were lined with a slightly thicker black canvas as well. The shape of the two patches almost looked like quartered watermelon rinds had been traced over the top of both shoulders, with the peak of the rind on either end entering the pit of the arms, which were also padded black. Tiny white zippers were placed on either wrist for adjusted comfort. William found it a bit odd that he actually liked the look of this uniform. He slipped the pants on over his boxers and adjusted as needed. As he picked the long sleeve shirt up once more, he noticed a white undershirt was already inside the jacket-esque top. Pulling the jacket overhead, William allowed the arms and undershirt to settle and form with his body. William then swung his arms around a bit and then gave an approving and curious with both corners of his mouth slightly dropped in an unexpectedly satisfied way. He knew now why he filled out all that information about his body size. William sat on the bed and looked out the window for a while. He started thinking about his dreams for the past week. He kept having the same one about the ocean. Each time he had it, he'd do something different. It felt like he was free in those dreams. The complete opposite from how William felt in the nightmare. In those, he felt helpless, weak, childish, and frightened. Which is not how William usually felt in a situation of danger. He hated that it got to him on such a deep level, and saw it all as a weakness. In the ocean dreams though, he'd walk along the ocean, other times he'd soar over it. One thing was for sure though. He felt like there was a huge crowd of people on the beach. He even heard their voices. As the dream progressed, the feeling of people being there became stronger and stronger. William suddenly snapped out of it after a while and looked down at the clock on the side of his bed. William headed toward the cafeteria. He was a little nervous about eating lunch with the patients, but he'd have to get used to it, so he manned up and walked in. It was like the movies. Some were talking to themselves, others drooling, some playing board games and cards. William walked towards the line where they were handing out lunch and medication. Only certain patients were taking the medication, others weren't. The ones taking it looked drowsy as hell though. As William stood in line, he felt someone tap his shoulder. William thought to himself, "What now?" as he cringed and turned his attention to the alleged tapper. It was the same guy that William noticed when he took his tour. The one with the messy hair who had his head down on the desk with a cigarette. He was a smoker and William couldn't stand smoke, so he kept some space. The man extended his hand out for a handshake and said to William,
"Hello, Mike. Name's David Glass. You're the new one, huh?"
William responded with a confused smile and shook his hand. "Hey, nice to meet you. My name's William, though." David replied,
"I know, Mike. I know. Just calm down, Mike. Yeah, I saw your name on the sign-in sheet. You're almost as old as me now, Mike."
William answered, "Oh yeah? How old are you?" David squinted his eyes shut in what looked to William like a state of annoyance. David answered William with his eyes still shut.
"Come on, Mike. I'm about 25 now. You gotta get your shit straight here now."
William laughed. "Oh yeah? Well, is any of this shit good to eat here?" David replied.
"Yeah, it's alright. They got little foods here every once in a while. You can sit by me when you eat if you want though, Mike. I'll tell you some shit around here."
William was interested in how David talked so choppy and skittish. He liked this guy though. Not only was he a smartass, but he didn't just call William Mike. He called everyone Mike, even the orderlies Bryce and Jared as they walked by to sit down and eat. They looked pissed as David walked by and said,
"Hey, Mike. Mike."
as he nodded at both of them. William followed promptly as David then whispered back at William, pointing to the temps with his right thumb.
"One of these guys got the damn dark disease, Mike. Real shit quill."
William's expression bore a resemblance to someone who sought answer as he replied, "What? Dark disease? What dark disease?" David shot back.
I'll explain later there.
They sat down at an empty table. David then talked again in full voice.
"So, William Iris, huh? Like the flower? Or that little fucking part in your eye?"
William replied, "Either one. I think they're spelled the same." "So you're David Glass?" "I saw your name on the sign-in sheet on the day before Christmas. That's shitty."
Yep. We're all shit quill nuts now, though. So I guess it's shattered glass and flower beds from here on out. You want to play cards? I got some. Took them from those mics over there.
William felt more comfortable about being here now and wasn't so nervous. The day went on and William just hung out and tagged along with David. They had a good time until the end of the day. Then came time for William's first night in the institution. He lay down in his new bed after eating dinner and fought sleep for a while, hearing a few light screams but nothing too traumatic. William finally dozed off.